What's up, guys? My name is Troy, but I also go by Tangled Boots, and I'm bringing you week 2 of the ABC. If you missed week 1, make sure you go catch up on that. But if you are all caught up and you are ready to move on to week 2, like I am, you are in the right place. Week 2, we are going to be facing off against Checkmate. Spoilers, it's a mono poison battle. I think I mentioned that at the end of my week 1 video. But yeah, we faced mono fighting and mono bug week 1. And now we have to fight mono poison. And so we're just getting all the fun matches out of the way early. So like my week 1 video, I'm going to try and go through the team builder pretty fast. I said I was going to go through it fast the first time, but it ended up being longer than the battle itself. So, I mean, there's always a timestamp in the description. At least I always try and put one there. If you want to skip the team builder, you can. Don't feel guilty about it. I get how it is. But if you are interested in my decisions and my thought process, then stick around because I'm about to talk about it. So jumping over into this document here, this is the matchup for this week. Straight out the gate, there's a lot of really interesting things about this matchup. First of all, I've never played Checkmate in a league battle. So, I mean, actually, I think in general, I know he's pretty good. That's the most important thing. Going into this, so definitely not going to sleep on this team even though it's mono poison. And at first I felt very good about my matchup. I was like, wow, I have a lot of great Pokemon for this matchup. But then the longer I looked, I was like, wow, I'm gonna run into issues with some of these Pokemon. So while I do think the matchup is in my favor, there's definitely ways where things could go wrong for sure. And so part of my team building process was making sure that that wouldn't happen. The first thing I noted, the same thing that I did with my week 1 battle versus Nico, is trying to recognize what I'm going to be able to abuse the type weakness problem with. And by that I mean poison is going to be weak to ground and psychic, at least generally speaking. So the Pokemon that I'm obviously going to look to that for are Nidoqueen and Espeon. The problem becomes, however, Checkmate drafted a very good mono poison team. And so there are some roadblocks to that type of approach. For example, he does have 2 ground immunities in Golbat and Coughing, and then 2 psychic immunities in Skuntank and Alolan Muck. So it's not just as clean, cut and dry as these are poison's weaknesses, that's what I'm going to abuse, although it does help to recognize what most of the team is weak to. An issue here can also be speed. Mega Beedrill hitting 145 speed is definitely spooky considering my fastest is 115. Salazzle also being 117 very annoyingly surpasses Mega Houndoom, who's at 115. So those two are a bit of an issue. I also recognize that Neolego, especially a Scarf Neolego, is very scary considering it outspeeds my base 100 Mega Salamence. Gengar also hitting 110 and speed tying with both Espeon and Lycanroc is also a bit of an issue. The team is really well built, and I could see a lot of these things potentially coming. Roserade, Tentacruel, and Salazzle actually make a Firewater Grass core, so there's some synergy going on there. I immediately recognized that most likely brings for him are going to be one of these 2 dark types, Muck or Skuntank. Reason being because he needs to stop Psychic Spam somehow. Espeon is definitely a really good bring for me regardless of how many immunities he has, just because so many poison types. So I definitely think one of them is coming for sure. I need to bring my Nidoqueen for sure, just to prevent toxic spikes from being a thing. Even though I have a good amount of Pokemon off the ground, I have a lot of defoggers, I have a magic bouncer, it's better to be safe than sorry. Because some of my Pokemon, I'm most likely going to need to rely on them not being poisoned. I'll get into that later. And yeah, those are basically my general notes, at least that I came up with when I first looked at this team. Very fast, very offensive, very powerful. Lots of potential for lots of these Pokemon to come. It's kind of hard to nail an exact 6 that I think will come. My original guess, if you want to know, was these first 3. Neolego, Muck, Roserade. I thought Beedrill for sure would come. Salazzle. So that's 5. And then, I mean, like, the last slot could have been anything. I expected him to probably bring a ground immunity just because he kind of needs one. But I also expected him to maybe just use a bunch of Shuka Berries. But that was my thought process going into it. Of course, with any league battle, you want to prepare for every single option your opponent has available to them. So finding a specific 6 isn't always the best route to go, especially not for a game like this where almost everything is a viable option. So I'm just going to jump right into the team that I actually decided to bring. We have Bones the Lycanroc making his debut on the team with a Swords Dance Focus Sash set. Now, the reason for this set, and I will kind of show you here in the matchup, is that I noticed that a lot of his Pokemon are actually very physically frail. And if you take a closer look, you'll notice that a lot of these Pokemon are like defensive in some way are more often defensive in special defense as opposed to physical defense. Neolego, for example, low defense, high special defense. The same goes for Tentacruel. I mean, Beedrill even to an extent. Both of his defenses are low, but his physical defense is significantly lower than his special defense. Roserade is another one. Roserade's special defense being very high and its physical defense not, really doing a whole lot for it. And so basically, physical priority is really good in this game. It's also really good because it allows me to overcome my speed issue, especially if he decides to, say, Scarf Salazzle, or Nidoking, or Neolego, things like that, even Scarf Gengar. And so Accelerock, I realize, is going to be doing a lot of damage. And at +2, I actually realized Lycanroc is in a really good position to sweep, because the things that outspeed a Lycanroc, which are Salazzle and Beedrill, are going to be killed by Accelerock at +2, especially if I have Stealth Rocks up. Everything else that he does outspeed, or speed tie with in the case of Gengar, can be killed with Stomping Tantrum. And then things that aren't killed by Stomping Tantrum, such as Golbat and Coughing, get bodied by a Stone Edge at +2. So Lycanroc, in a sense, is our kind of win condition, at least from the get-go. With Tough Claws, everything, is boosted. I have Stomping Tantrum instead of Drill Run because, fun fact, both of them are boosted by Tough Claws, if you didn't know. And I would rather take the 5 drop in power to get a fully accurate move, if that makes sense. Drill Run is base 80 and Stomping Tantrum is base 75. It's not a huge difference, and it's not enough of a difference for me to want to risk missing ever, especially if this is supposed to be my late game sweeper. Focus Sash allows me to guarantee a Swords Dance. It also lets me stop a potential sweep, say if Neolego starts to get going and things get really scary. Focus Sash is also a way for me to deal with Gengar in the event that I get a Swords Dance off for free and I'm at full health. It lets me risk the speed tie instead of having to hope for Accelerock to do all the damage that I need it to do. If I have the Focus Sash intact, I'm much more able to take on Gengar. And that's all there really is to the Lycanroc set. There's not a whole lot fancy about it. And that's also kind of similar with the Nidoqueen, except we do have a small little unique tech on it, which is the fact that we're running both Earth Power and Earthquake. Nidoqueen is coming for its second game, Versailles, Nidoqueen. And rocking Stealth Rock, Earth Power, Ice Beam, and Earthquake with Sheer Force. Now, the reason for this set is because I realized I didn't need my speed very early on to the preparation phase, because all of the Pokemon, on here, as you can see, pretty much outspeed Nidoqueen besides Coughing and Muck. And essentially, I don't think either of those two are going to be running speed investment for any reason. So I can actually afford to be a minus speed nature. I don't really benefit from trying to outspeed any of these things on here. I want to be a Stealth Rock setter. I want to be defensive because I want Nidoqueen to be able to stay around in this game to be able to not only take hits from some of these Pokemon, but also to absorb Toxic Spikes if needed. Also to set up rocks multiple times if Golbat decides to defog. Having both Earth Power and Earthquake is an idea that basically came about from looking at what I was doing with Lycanroc and focusing on the defenses of his team. Essentially, there are some cases where ground moves could be better physical or special. And the Sheer Force boost is obviously going to come into play, so Earth Power in general is going to be more powerful, but there are some Pokemon on here, like Mega Beedrill for example, that take an Earthquake significantly worse than they would take an Earth Power. Earth Power, though, is the better option against something like Nidoking, for example, with that Sheer Force boost, where both of his defenses are generally the same. I have the Shuckleberry for that very reason. It allows me to 1v1 Nidoking, especially in a scenario where we both lead our Nidos. I will be able to get my rocks up, or potentially just go for Earth Power turn 1 and try and take him out since I have the Shuckleberry. It also allows me to take on Neolego. Neolego takes more damage from the Earthquake, obviously, and if it has Earth Power, I will be able to eat that hit very easily because I'm specially defensive, and with the Sugar Berry as well, and be able to knock it out. Ice Beam is my last move, which allows me to basically hit the things that Earthquake and Earth Power don't. There are some Pokemon on here that take ground moves neutrally, like Roserade for example, and it's also hit by Ice Beam, but a lot of times I might actually just want to click Earthquake on it. Mega Beedrill is another one, but that's a case where I will probably Earthquake as well. Golbat, however, is something that could be very problematic for Nidoqueen, especially because it could taunt it, especially if it's a lead. So I want to be able to Ice Beam it and at least pressure it enough to maybe make it switch out, especially if it's just defogging my rocks away. My Nidoqueen can't really hit Coughing, but I'm honestly not too worried about it, if I'm just being real. Moving right along, I decided to bring a really heat set. So I was looking at potential Z moves, and I realized that Salamence is honestly probably better as a Scarfer this game. So spoilers, I'm bringing Scarf Salamence. I'll get more into that in a bit. But I wanted to bring a Z ground move because I feel like it could be very essential in breaking down his team. And so it's going to be Samurot's time to shine. Rotom Wash, you know, I did want a water type just because I feel like it's valuable against the Salazzle. I need something to kind of take fire hits so far, because Lycanroc isn't going to cut it as my only answer to Salazzle since I'm trying to rely on it as a late game sweeper. So Samurott works very well because Rotom Wash kind of scares me since it doesn't really do a ton to some of these Pokemon on here. Especially if it has to rely on Hydro Pump to hit Neolego and Salazzle. I would rather have Samurott here as my water type. So Samurott's coming, and we have a Groundium Z Samurott. Z Dig. I was very tired when I came up with this set, and part of it was kind of a joke, but I realized it's actually pretty good. Z Dig allows me to pick up the KO on all sorts of Pokemon. It allows me to pick up the KO on a offensive Alolan Muck. It definitely allows it on Nidoking, although Nidoking wouldn't stay in out of fear of the water move. It allows me to pick up the KO on Skuntank. All sorts of things, honestly. The other great thing about Samurott is that he has priority as well, just like how Lycanroc does. The main appeal with Aqua Jet is that it hits all of the prime suspects for Scarf users. It hits Neolego, Nidoking, and Salazzle, all very terrifying if they're Scarf, and it hits them for super effective, so that's really nice. Samurott is in the same boat with Nidoqueen where it doesn't really need its speed, and there's no real benefit in trying to outspeed like a speed invested Muck, in my opinion, because I don't think he'll run speed investment. I think he'll either be defensive or like max HP Assault Vest with max attack, or just like full on Choice Band like Adamant. The point is, I don't see speed being a factor in here, especially when he can use like Shadow Sneak or Pursuit to kind of get ahead of the game in a sense, kind of circumventing his speed. And so just like Nidoqueen, it allows me to use Samurott's other usable attacking stat with special attack and use Ice Beam, which basically hits, you know, the same things that Nidoqueen's going to hit with Ice Beam. It's going to hit that Roserade, which might be a prime switch into Samurott. It allows me to predict with Samurott. Same with Golbat. Just because Golbat's annoying, it might be very physically defensive and might want to take these hits really well. Aqua Jet, Liquidation, they should just kind of be obvious. I'm running Torrent just because it could be useful with an Aqua Jet in the late game to get a more powerful Aqua Jet off as opposed to, you know, avoiding crits. I'm not too worried about that. I'd rather have the big damage Aqua Jet. So moving right along, like I said, we do have Scarf Salamence on the team. Rockin' Dragon Claw, Outrage, Earthquake, and Zen Headbutt. This is pretty much like exactly what you would expect me to bring against a mono poison team if I had Salamence. I mean, like, it just kind of makes sense. There's no Steel type and no Fairy type on the team, so Dragon Claw and Outrage are basically free reign. The reason I have both on a Scarf set is because I do want to be able to switch if I need to. I don't want to be stuck outraging against something, and I want to be able to, you know, save my Scarfer if I need it to kill something later, such as make a Beedrill. That's what my speed investment is, by the way. This speed investment, I actually get to run Adamant. Allows me to outspeed Mega Beedrill if it's max speed. I don't expect Mega Beedrill to be max speed, but I want to be safe anyways. But Outrage is basically there to clean in the late game if I really need the extra damage, or just to nuke something if it becomes a problem. Earthquake and Zen Headbutt are both on here, but these aren't safe options until I remove the immunities or if they don't come. Like I said, I do expect Alolan Muck to come. Golbat and Koffing could come. It's basically all about trying to knock those things out so that Earthquake and Zen Headbutt become more viable options. And then once those are removed, a Moxie boosting Salamence can easily clean up this game. And next up, moving right along, we do have Scizor. Scizor makes perfect sense for this matchup considering that it's a Steel type and I'm facing Mono Poison. I'm immune to all the stabs, obviously, so that's a big appeal. Bullet Punch is obviously going to be good for the same reasons Aqua Jet and Accelerock are. I'm really trying to target that low physical defense. Scizor also allows me to be a switch-in to certain Pokemon, which I don't really have great switch-ins to at the moment. If Nidoqueen goes down, for example, since, you know, it could easily go down in a one-on-one matchup versus Nidoking if we're both Choco Berry, for example, I need something else to take hits from Mega Beedrill. And so Scizor is great for that. Scizor basically beats Mega Beedrill every time, 1v1. And Scizor is also, additionally, another great late-game sweeper. This game's just really good for setup sweepers in general because he does have some bulk on this team, but not a whole lot of recovery. Golbat's really, you know, the main thing that's recovering here, but something like Tentacruel isn't going to be recovering, and then Roserade can recover, but it doesn't really like to fit Synthesis onto its moveset, at least a lot of the time. That's just my experience, though. So yeah, we do have a Swords Dance, Bullet Punch, Bug Bite, and Roost. Bug Bite is actually in the event that I'm facing Muck. This speed investment that I have is basically just in case, you know, I've been saying Muck's not going to run speed, but just in case it tries to outspeed my Scizor, which is something that it very well could do to hit me with a Fire Punch, I wanted to have a tiny bit of speed investment to potentially outspeed a speed creep, and then the rest is just typical Scizor EV spread. And Bug Bite will basically allow me to eat either Shuka Berries, which, I mean, will basically do nothing for Scizor, but remove it for the rest of my team, or it will allow me to eat like an Ayapapa Berry, or whatever berry Muck might have that it uses Recycle with. And once I eat that berry, it won't be able to recycle anymore. So in the event of, you know, a Muck that doesn't have Fire Punch, but it has, you know, Curse and Recycle, for example, with Ayapapa Berry, I will be able to beat it that way by consuming its berry. And wrapping up the team shouldn't be too much of a surprise. We do have Espeon back again, Casper, Week 1 MVP, with a pretty interesting set. There's a lot going on here, a lot to unpack. So Psyshock, Hidden Power Ground, Morning Sun, and Future Sight. Psyshock, again, targeting that physical defense. I don't know how many times I'm going to say it. I mean, probably not too many because I'm wrapping up the team builder here. But I really focused on the low physical defense of some of these Pokemon. That was kind of my goal anyways. Even if, you know, Golbat is max physical defense, these are still super effective hits we're talking about. So, well, at least in the case of Espeon. So I'm not that concerned about, you know, what if he does run a bunch of physical defense on some of these Pokemon. It's not that much of a concern to me. Hidden Power Ground is an option that allows me to hit the two immunities to Psyshock, Muckalola and Skuntank. Morning Sun allows me to keep Espeon healthy. Basically, you know, against some of these Pokemon, Espeon isn't too threatened considering its special defense, and some of these Pokemon that it scares out, such as Tentacruel, for example, or Salazzle, I can get a Morning Sun off if Espeon's been chipped down, and I'll be able to heal myself basically and keep Espeon alive for longer so it can keep putting in work. And honestly, these three moves were all I really felt like I needed. Colbur Berry, by the way, is there for Muck and Skuntank, basically for Pursuit. It allows me to potentially save Espeon if I want to by switching out, but even if I don't want to and I want to stay in, it allows me to basically get off 2 Hidden Power Grounds against one of those things, and if they're in range, that could be the difference between killing Muck or not killing Muck, or killing Skuntank and not killing Skuntank. It could be that difference maker. So there's not really any other item I want to run on Espeon. This isn't a choice specs type of week because of those immunities, so that's why Colbur Berry's on there. But Future Sight, that's what I was talking about, Future Sight. What's interesting about Future Sight is basically in situations where I force things out and I would click Morning Sun if I was low health, if I'm already full health and I'm forcing something out like Tentacruel or Salazzle, instead of going for the recovery, I can go for damage. And so it'll basically limit his options, because say he has a dark type, for example, still alive. Like, obviously that's a switch into Future Sight, but that basically narrows down the amount of plays he can make, because if he doesn't go into Muck on that turn when Future Sight is going to strike, then something's pretty much going to die. If he does go into that, well, then I can know that and make a play based on that. For example, if I know Muck or Skuntank has to come in, that's an easy switch into Nidoqueen for me. So it basically forces his hand into making certain plays at the cost of like keeping his Pokemon alive. And with all that being said, yeah, that's my team. I feel pretty good about this matchup. It could be scary depending on the sets he brings. Like I said, there could be lots of surprises in this game based on, you know, what Pokemon he ends up bringing or not bringing. It's really just all going to depend on how the game goes down and how we both handle each other's teams. So without further ado, let's go over and watch the battle. So here we are, week 2 of the ABC, facing off against Checkmate, and this is the team he decided to bring. As you can see, 2 dark types, both of them came, and we do have a ground immunity in Golbat. So the moves that we did have to kind of capitalize on the poison typing aren't going to be as effective until those guys are removed. Lots of big threats on this team though. The Beedrill, the Neolego, and the Salazzle are all very terrifying to me. The Alolan Muck can be terrifying depending on the circumstance. We really need to find out what its set is, because there's so many different things it could be. In terms of leads, I'm kind of thinking that pretty much anything is possible based on the Pokemon that he has here. Because if you'll look, I mean, like, both of these are great options because they're dark types, so it counters me trying to do anything in terms of spamming Psychic with Espeon. And they can also try and Pursuit Trap something. Mega Beedrill is a great lead option for him because it allows him to outspeed pretty much all of my Pokemon unless, you know, I'm Scarf, and U-turn on them. Although I do have a lot of priority, so it's honestly probably the least likely option. But the threat is still there. If he wants to go big damage and get the Mega Evolution off early, I understand. Neolego is scary because it could set up rocks, and it could also set up Toxic Spikes potentially. And, you know, with the team that I ended up bringing, it could be very detrimental to Lycanroc or Samurott because of the fact that they're grounded, and Lycanroc specifically, relying on its Focus Sash, definitely doesn't want Toxic Spikes up. So it's something I need to be worried about. Golbat and Salazzle are great leads because they can taunt some of my Pokemon, primarily Nidoqueen, which wants to get up rocks against them, and then Golbat obviously can U-turn. So I'm looking here, and basically I'm realizing that Samurott can do damage to every single thing on here. He didn't bring Roserade, which is a huge sigh of relief for Samurott, and therefore opens up a lot of doors. So yeah, I basically finally decided that I'm going to be running Samurott as my lead, and we're just going to see how it goes from there. So I'm leading Samurott, and he leads Skuntank. That's the lead that we see come out. Now, this doesn't really tell me a whole lot. I do think he kind of just let it because it can kind of do something against any of my Pokemon depending on what type of set it is. But it doesn't really tell me what it wants to do versus my Samurott. However, I do know that I can kill this thing in one shot with Z-Dig. And the likelihood of him switching out into Golbat doesn't seem incredibly high to me. So I'm going to try and go for big damage turn 1 and throw off my ground EMZ. He goes for the Foul Play, does huge damage, and here we go, going for the Tectonic Rage Buddy Shuckleberry. So it does 55%. He goes for another Foul Play, leaving me on 2%, and I get the crit Liquidation. I don't know if that really matters because I did have Aqua Jet, so I would have been able to outspeed the next turn and go for that. If he had Sucker Punch, then it could have been, you know, a different situation maybe. But essentially I throw off a Liquidation and I got that crit, and it ends up killing me because of Aftermath. I would have died anyways even if I had to rely on the Aqua Jet on the next turn. But essentially we have a trade-off here. I trade off my Samurott in exchange for basically one of his dark immunities gone, which feels really good. And honestly, I feel like I kind of win in this scenario. Granted, I lose a great priority user for the late game, especially because he has Neolego and Salazzle. So that is kind of unfortunate. But it's better to have the Aftermath work on Samurott than it would be on something else on the team. And this basically kind of creates like a lead 2.0 situation. We both have to send something out. And basically, what ends up happening is that he leads Golbat and I try to lead Salamence. The reason I went Salamence here is because I potentially saw him going into Beedrill here, because with Skuntank gone, you know, it opens the doors wider for Espeon, and I thought that would either bring in Alolan Muck or Mega Beedrill to outspeed it, Alolan Muck to try and trap it. So I tried to lead Salamence, which could basically hit any of those, but no dice. So there's this Golbat in front of me, and I switch into Lycanroc here because I'm realizing that this is probably the easiest thing for me to set up on his team. I don't really want to set up on Muck. Neolego's too big of a threat, and honestly, so is Salazzle. Because just, I mean, depending on the situation, it could just get really ugly. This is the most passive thing that I can set up on. Even if it does Toxic me, it's not really going to be damaging me a ton. So I go right into this as a flying resist, but also with the intention of trying to set up and sweep. He goes for a Super Fang, which kind of sucks, but this allows me a very easy Swords Dance. And in this scenario, it's looking very scary for him because Accelerock is putting in so much damage with Stone Edge and everything, and I do have the ground move for this Muck that switches in right here. So I do think he could be Shook Berry, and that would suck. But I put in a ton of damage on this Muck, even if he is Shook Berry. So it's worth it to just stay in and go for it with Lycanroc. I wanted Lycanroc to be my late game sleeper, but if it has to happen now to put a chunk in on his team, then so be it. So I'm going to throw off the Stomping Tantrum here, and he's not Shook Berry, but it doesn't take him out, and he's Figgy Berry. So Knockoff is going to take me out, and this is really unfortunate because, you know, he ended up being max HP, max defense impish, and that's something I did calc for in the early stages, but not later on. I expected him to be more of a specially defensive set, but I mean, I do understand. I mean, like, it makes total sense why he would be max physical defense. Like I said, I was trying to target that physical defense, so it makes sense that he needed to patch up that hole somewhere, and he did that with Muck. The issue becomes that this Muck is now 59% HP, and my Lycanroc is dead. Another priority user down, and one of my best ways of handling Salazzle. So that's going to come into play later, obviously, but just in terms of me mentally thinking about it, I'm realizing, oh no, this is becoming a problem fast. I'm now down 4-5. This isn't good. So we're going to go into Nidoqueen here. We need to get our rocks up. We need to pressure this Beedrill and this Salazzle. Also Neolego if it's Scarfed. He stays in actually on that turn. Let's go back for a second. He stays in on that turn, even though I bring it in to kind of scare it out. He stays in for the knockoff, I guess expecting my rocks, which is a good play on him, and he gets the crit knockoff, so he's rewarded for that play. And I lose my Shook Berry, which means I can't take on Neolego as well. I throw off an Earth Power here, just, you know, if he wants to stay in, so be it. But obviously in comes the Golbat, and now Nidoqueen and Golbat are kind of, you know, at odds with each other, but he's going to defog as I go into Scizor here. The reason I made this play is because right here is when he goes for Super Fang and brings me down to 25%. Depending on his set, Brave Bird has a chance to kill me. And I do want to keep Nidoqueen healthy, just in case. Not really for Toxic Spikes at this point, but, you know, it's not really worth it throwing away Nidoqueen at this point, especially if it can be a sack later. I'd rather go safely into Scizor, who doesn't really care if he gets Super Fang because he can just roost it off. So that's my reason for going into it there, especially because I knew another Ice Beam wouldn't do the job. This allows me to get in Scizor, and he brings in Muck here as I actually double back into my Nidoqueen. I expected the Muck to try and come back in, depending on the situation. I also expected maybe Salazzle to come in, and so Nidoqueen would have been the appropriate sack there, which is why I tried to bring it in there. Anyways, in comes Golbat on my Earth Power. I just, you know, was trying to attack what was in front of me. And then Super Fang, you know, brings me down to 13%, and that Ice Beam isn't enough, and he reveals Hidden Power, which I believe to be Hidden Power Ice, which is a really interesting tech on his part to try and hit Salamence. But now Golbat is right in front of me, and it looks like it's going to be Salamence food for a Moxie Sweep. So that's immediately what I'm going to try and do. And he actually goes right down into Neolego, and Dragon Claw does not take him out, and this forces my hand really badly here, because if he's Scarf, which would be awful, he has a chance to kill my Salamence depending on his set, or depending on the move he goes for, like Hidden Power Ice, for example. I don't remember the calcs off the top of my head, but I feel like Power Gem had a chance to take me out. Maybe that was after Rocks, though. It's probably after Rocks. Anyways, the point still stands that Neolego, if it's Scarf, kills my Salamence here, and basically most of my chance of winning this game, because Scizor and Espeon can't do it alone. And so I can't risk staying in on this. Even though it seems like he's bringing it in as a sack, I just can't risk it. So I go out into my Scizor here. He's going to be able to take the Power Gem. It would have been able to take a Hidden Power Ice, obviously a lot better, but I'm not complaining. And I get to throw off a Bullet Punch here and take out Neolego. So that feels really good because a potential Scarfer is gone. And I think I would actually find out later at the end of the game that it was indeed Scarf Neolego. So I really dodged a bullet there and made the appropriate play. He took a lot of time to make that play because he thought I might have Pursuit, so he thought it was his best bet to stay in and try and get the 2-hit KO. But I just decided to Bullet Punch and just, hit something, because Salazzle can actually be put in range of a +2 Bullet Punch by taking a neutral Bullet Punch. So I thought if he wanted to try and switch out and maybe go into Salazzle, that would be good. Also, if he sacks Golbat, that would be good, because it's at 6%. It's going to die to a Bullet Punch, and that opens the door for Salamence to sweep with Earthquake, with the ground immunity being gone. But now with a Scizor standing in front of him, obviously he's going to go into Salazzle, and I get great information here because, well, I go into Espeon here, but I get great information here because he's not Air Balloon, which is something that I was worried about. And so now I know that once Golbat is gone, Earthquake is very spammable. Even if he's Shook a Berry, it shouldn't be an issue since he's quad weak to Earthquake. So, yeah, potential scary situation is maybe Sash with Hidden Power Ice, but I'm not too concerned. I can just, freely go for Earthquake now once Golbat is dead. But I go into Espeon just because I can't risk taking the damage on Salamence, also potentially getting burned, also potentially taking a Hidden Power Ice. All of those being realities, I go into Espeon to take this Fire Blast, and it does 62%, which is a very sizable chunk. I am just going to throw off a Psyshock here. I don't really care if Muck comes in, because I'm just trying to get damage off, and he sacks his ground immunity. Now here, hold on, let's go back, because he made a really weird play here. So he goes into Golbat here, and this is basically because he was under the impression, actually, and this is pretty unfortunate, he basically thought that Salazzle did not outspeed Espeon. He messed up the speeds in his head, and so his play was probably to stay in there, and because I thought he was assuming I was Scarf Espeon. That was the thing, because the plays he made afterwards made sense. But supposedly he just forgot that his Salazzle actually outsped Espeon, so he could have stayed in there and killed Espeon. I was sacking Espeon at this point, so this damage is actually very welcome, and taking out Golbat is huge because that removes the ground immunity for Salamence's Earthquake. So we kill Golbat here, and then this is why I thought he was checking for Scarf, because he goes into Beedrill, and if I was Scarf, I would just click Psyshock again. So he goes into Muck, but I think this was more of just him kind of realizing that, that Beedrill was the wrong decision, and that Muck was probably just better. And he was baiting the Psychic move at that point anyway, so I think he basically just doubled back on his own decision. But the reality is, he's in now with Muck, and I'm in with Espeon, and I'm just going to stay in. Well, I go for the Psyshock here, because I was trying to hit the Beedrill. I go for Hidden Power Ground here, which I haven't revealed yet. And he's going to go for the Ice Punch, actually, to predict my Salamence, which, honestly, I understand, because at this point in the game, he was trying to get ahead, and that would have been huge for him, because Salamence is, poised to kind of win the game from here. So I understand why he made that play, but fortunately this means that Espeon gets to fire up another attack, and he cannot live another Hidden Power Ground. So he actually goes back out into Beedrill, and this gives me great chip damage on Beedrill, because now Bullet Punch from Scizor is looking even better. But I'm just going to finally let Espeon go down here. Espeon, you did great. Week 1 MVP, and, put in some work this game too, put on some pressure, so proud of Espeon for sure. But Beedrill picks up the KO here, and we're actually down 2-3. But now I feel like I'm in a great position here, because now by taking out Espeon with U-turn, he's going to have to go into either Salazzle or Muck. And that's basically going to invite my Salamence in. And since I am Scarf, I don't know why it lagged there for a second. Since I am Scarf, I'm going to be able to go for Scarf Earthquake and pick up a Moxie boost. No Shook a Berry, it wouldn't even have mattered if he was, like I said earlier. And at +1, Salamence is basically positioned to sweep the game at this point. As you see, Muck's going to go down, And even if Beedrill, if I did my speed wrong for some reason, if Beedrill outsped me, Sizzler would have the game at this point. So that's going to be a GG to Checkmate, and what a game it was. Can't say I've ever faced Mono Poison, and I can't say I ever want to face it again. It was very challenging to build for and to battle. And man, I'm kind of a believer in poison types now. I gotta say, it's a really unique team to build the draft around specifically. Obviously, you miss some things, but I think you have a team that really kind of embodies the best qualities of what a mono poison draft could be, if that makes sense. Obviously not like an optimal strategy, but it seems really fun, and like I'm almost kind of jealous. Like I wish I could try it out. But anyways, yeah, it's gonna be a GG. Salamence picks up the late game win for us, the late game mini sweep. Even though it was only like 3 Pokemon, the rest of the whole team honestly did work in my opinion. I wish Lycanroc got to have his day and sweep, but I mean, I'm sure there will be more games where he gets a chance. But yeah, that's about it. I don't have much else to say. We're now 2-0, which feels great. And we are definitely making moves in our division for sure. And yeah, I just can't say GG enough to Checkmate. I had a lot of fun this game. It was a really unique challenge to prepare for. And moving on from here, we're going to be facing non-monotype teams finally. We kind of got them out of the way, and that will start with Devious Ditto. So looking forward to that. We'll definitely be covering that game as well. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a comment or something. Let me know what you thought. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.